This is lesson 30, part 1, and we'll be covering note names in the bass clef. Remember that we have moved on to the pitch portion of this music literacy course. If you have developed a practice habit or a daily practice routine, I would encourage you to continue to devote a good chunk of that practice time to developing your rhythm reading skills. Remember that two of the most fundamental elements of music and music reading are beat and rhythm, and then pitch. And so we're going to be continuing to isolate those reading skills. So I would continue to practice beat and rhythm separately, and then we'll continue to develop our understanding and then eventual reading and realization of pitch. In musical terms, pitch refers to how high or low we perceive a musical tone to be. There are two basic types of sound waves. There are random waves and uniform waves. We perceive random waves as indefinite pitches, so essentially noise. Uniform waves, on the other hand, are perceived as definite pitches, i.e., musical tones. In Western music, we refer to specific uniform waves or musical tones by letter names. The musical alphabet consists of just 7 letter names, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then we just continue to repeat that. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. If we are ascending or getting higher in pitch, we'll say that alphabet in order, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. If we are descending in pitch, we will go backwards through the alphabet. So G, F, E, D, C, B, A. The composer represents pitches or specific musical tones on the staff by placing note heads on and above and below the musical staff. So a note head on space 1 will have a different musical tone than a note head on space 4 as long as we're in the same clef. Notes can move in 3 ways: stepwise motion, skipwise motion, and stationary motion. Stepwise motion refers to notes that move from one letter name to the very next adjacent higher or lower letter name. So for example, an A that moves up to a B, or an A that moves down to a G. With stepwise motion on the staff, it will always appear as a space note going directly to the very next line note up or down, or a line note going from that line note to the very next space note up or down. Skipwise motion refers to notes that move up or down by more than a step. So skipping over letter names from an A to a C, say, or from an A down to an F, so skipping right over G. Could also be an A all the way up to an E, or an A going down to a D. On the staff, this could appear as a line note going to a different line note, or a line note going to a different space note, but not a space note that's directly next to that line note. Stationary motion is exactly what it sounds like, a note that is repeated, the exact same pitch. So the motion is not going up or down, it's staying static.
Returning to J. Albrecht's Ready to Read Music, we're now on Unit 3, which is the pitch unit, Lesson 2, Note Names in the Bass Clef. We'll begin just by reading together. Now let's name the lines and spaces in the bass clef. Remember that the bass clef is used for the left hand of the piano, for men's voices, and for lower instruments like the cello. Do remember that the bass clef is also known as the F clef. Here's why. The 2 dots above and below the 4th line tell us that the 4th line is an F. So remember, for a bass clef, we start on line 4, we bump up to line 5, draw half a heart stopping just under line 2, and then a dot goes in space 4 and a dot goes on space 3. And these dots highlight the importance of line 4, and this note will be an F. Here's F in the bass clef. So the 4th line will be an F. If we know where to find F in the bass clef, we can find every other note in the staff. Remember, after G, we start the alphabet over again with A. So going up, or we could say ascending, this would be an F, this would be a G, A, and then B. Notice that the space above the top line has a letter name. So he's talking about this note, the B, which even though it is not an official space note because it does not fall into space 1, 2, 3, or 4 on the staff, it functions a little bit like that because it is on the space directly above the note on line 5, which is why we can easily label it as a B. Going down, we'll have to go backwards in the alphabet from F, like this. F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F. Notice that the space below the bottom line has a letter name. So again, notice this is almost like a space note. It's one space lower than this note on line 1, which is our G. Notice also that from this F to this F, we have covered the span of an octave. And remember, that's the term we use to describe the interval or the distance between two pitches that share the very same letter name, but that are 8 letter names apart. So if we start on this A here and count up, beginning with 1 on A, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and ending with 8 on this A, we have covered the span of 1 octave. So this A will be lower than this A. Likewise, this C to this C would form an octave. So beginning with 1 on C, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've covered 8 letter names ending with 8 on this C, and that would also be the span of an octave. So this F is an octave higher than this F. This higher F would likely be more comfortable for a tenor singer, and this lower F would likely be more comfortable for a bass singer. Here are all the letter names of the lines and spaces in the bass clef. So F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Let's just go through and notice the octaves we have here. So even though this is an F and this is an F, they're obviously on different places on the staff because this is a higher F than this lower F. So if a bass singer sang this lower F and a tenor singer sang this higher F, they would be singing in unison, but they would also be singing an octave apart. Likewise, this G is 1 octave lower than this G because they are 8 letter names apart. Notice that when we calculate that distance, or we call it interval, between two pitches, we do include that starting pitch as pitch number 1 and the ending pitch as the final number. Notice this A is 1 octave lower than this A because there are 8 letter names between those two pitches, counting this first A as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this B to this B is also an octave. So this B might be sung by a bass singer. This upper B might be sung by a tenor singer. They would be singing an octave apart, but it would sound as if they were singing in unison. The spaces from bottom to top are A, C, E, G. And notice that we count only this first space note. Even though the F sort of functions a little bit like a space note, we do not call this a space note because it is not on one of the 4 numbered spaces on the staff. So officially we begin with A, and then C, E, G. Some people remember these because it is the first letter from each word in the sentence, all cows eat grass. The lines from bottom to top are G, B, D, F, A, G, B, D, F, A. Some people remember these because it is the first letter from each word in the sentence, good boys do fine always. As I mentioned, with the treble clef kind of cheats J. Albrecht provided for memorizing or quickly identifying the letter names on the staff of a treble clef, I really don't recommend these methods as a way of learning your letter names because, as you see, just with these two notes that we know so far that are beyond the staff, this is actually a very common occurrence. We're going to be able to go even farther above and below the staff. So I really recommend understanding how you derive any letter name in a clef based on the code embedded in every clef. So with the F or bass clef, we know that because these dots highlight line 4, this is an F. And from there, I recommend getting in the habit right from the beginning of just working through that process of counting up your letter names or down your letter names. And you will really quickly then memorize the pitches represented by the notes on these lines and spaces. Just as you would with math facts, it's better to understand that 1 apple plus 5 apples equals 6 apples. And then eventually to just memorize that because you really understand it deeply and have done it so many times, rather than just rote memorization of 1 plus 5 equals 6, where they're literally meaningless numbers to you, and you just memorize that almost as a statement. I really recommend deriving the letter names for now rather than quickly just memorizing a saying that is going to be very limited in its helpfulness to you in the long term.